Hello, friends. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about ethics. And this topic has cropped up in my mind only because during the past few days, maybe about 3 weeks, I've had two experiences which have made me believe that this is a very important topic because ethics is what is going to take the person to greater heights and make that person a person with whom somebody, at least somebody like me, would desire to associate with and work with. While these two people, maybe in their viewpoint, they have not been unethical, maybe I am being a little too finicky about it, but from my point of view, from where I stand, I feel that incidents that occurred were not made by a person who I believe would be ethical. So ethics and integrity, they are the foundation. They are the basis on which culture, principles, priorities, and directions of anybody, whether it's an individual, whether it's a professional, whether it's a company, or whether it's an organization. All of these entities need to have ethics and integrity as the basic foundation of their success and operations. Because it is this that will help you, either as an individual or as an organization, to establish yourself and make you desirable for people to associate with and work with. You need to communicate your values and be honest about what you do and what you say. And it is this that is going to help you to grow and develop yourself personally as well as professionally. I may be old school, but I do believe that if somebody has not been very, very ethical, either in personal or in the professional arena, I would definitely think a few times, not just twice. I would definitely think a few times before associating with that person, even in the other space. That means if you've been professionally unethical, I may not consider you to be personally amenable to any of my requirements. And let us be very clear about one thing. Honesty cannot be blurred or gray. Honesty is very sharply focused, and it is always black and white. There are no gray areas. There is no middle ground, so to say. So either you're honest or you are dishonest. There is no way of saying that, oh, but I'm honest when it comes to this and dishonest when it comes to that. No. If you tell me you're dishonest on one thing, for me, you are dishonest all across the place. And it's the same with honesty. If you tell me you're honest, you are honest in every single thing that you do. And it is very, very important to understand this and to cultivate and establish your own ethical standards. My ethical standards may not work for you, or you may not agree with it, or you may not believe in it. So you set your own ethical standards. But ethical standards cannot be something that is not the norm. If you take a job from me, you ask for an advance, and then you don't deliver what you were contracted to do, and then say that, but I worked on your project. And then say, okay, that's the end of it. Or if you take up my project, you give me some sketches which I don't find as per my brief, and then for over Some 3 weeks or 4 weeks, you keep telling me, I'm sending it, I'm sending it, I'm sending tomorrow, I'm sending by today evening, and nothing comes up. And then you tell me, I'm sorry, I'm too busy, I've got too much other work and cannot do it. And yet refuse to refund the advance you have collected. That is grossly unethical. So it is very important to understand, cultivate, and set your own ethical standards. Maybe for the designer, she thinks she did the right thing. I don't know. Could be. And you cannot and should not change the threshold of your values to suit your needs or to get some small benefit or gain in a given situation. So this is what I'm talking of when I talk of ethics, that money was not the criteria, but the way I was treated and the way in the casual this thing attitude that person had to saying, okay, get it done somewhere else, after I having waited for 4 or 5 weeks for that work to get done, is what is more unethical than just the money part of it. So let's look at ethics now. Ethics comes from the word ethos. And the word ethos actually, by definition, conveys the idea of security and stability. Okay? Ethos is referred to as a place where one would go and seek protection, seek shelter in times that are causing an immense amount of turbulence, maybe a storm or maybe anything. Maybe today's times you would call it a bunker, okay, or a meeting point. So this kind of a place which is protective, which is stable, was known as ethos. And therefore, ethics, when we talk of it, looking at the word that it comes from, is a set of standards that are absolute, that are positive, and that are permanent. There are no stopgap arrangements there. Ethics is a set of standards that people ought to do. They may not always do it, but they ought to do that. So, we very often say that, oh, this is morally wrong. And by and large, we associate moral and ethics together. We use them interchangeably very often, but then we are using them wrong. Whereas ethics, as I just described, is a set of rules by which you ought to live. Moral is about what people actually do. So, whether they ought to do it or not, as far as morals is concerned, they do it. And that is why the standard of morals keeps changing. It reflects societal norms, because something that is moral today may not have been moral 20 years back and may not be moral 20 years hence. So it changes with the generations. It changes as society changes. And it shifts. It keeps shifting the parameters with the trends. Basically, morals adapt to the time of your lives. Now, having talked about ethos and honesty and integrity and everything else, let us understand one thing very clearly. Character of a person would determine and guide his conduct. And your conduct is what determines your credibility. No matter how good your character is, if your conduct is bad, your credibility will be zero. And we all know that credibility is one of the most essential pillars of leadership. So if credibility is so important, and it is one of the key pillars of leadership, are we surprised or do we have any doubt when we say that it is the leader who sets the standards for ethics and integrity whether it is in a family or in an organization. So leaders are key to ethics, integrity, honesty. So leaders are the driving force. And if leaders are the driving force behind creating, maintaining, and imbibing the right values and ethics in the family or the entire organization, the first and foremost thing they need to learn is the art of communicating the values and ethics to the team and the family members in the best way possible. And it all begins with starting by setting the right example. And this is very, very important and at times very difficult to do, because more often than not, social norms guide our behavior. It affects our behavior. And when you are in our circle, where everybody is a confidant, so to say, we do at times let our values sway. And this, when it happens, means you're moving away from your ethics, and therefore you should avoid it at all costs. Another thing leaders need to do is to frame the ethics manifesto, so to say, which will not only talk of the ethics, but it will also talk of the prevention measures so that you don't go astray from the ethics. And therefore, that whole communication has to be twofold. One is to promote ethics, and the second is on how to prevent being unethical. It's just as important. And especially in organizations, and very often with the family also, you need to stress the importance of means. Especially in business, more often than not, we tend to think and look only at the outcomes of what every single team member is doing. But what we need to also do is look at the means that the person employed to reach that outcome. And if that outcome, no matter how big an achievement it is, if it is not achieved using the right means, it definitely needs to be reviewed, looked at, and that person needs to be reprimanded and cautioned not to do it in the future. And when we are talking of such a manifesto, don't just get your teams to memorize the do's and don'ts. That's pretty easy to do, but that is not then really a part of their character. So what you need to do is to teach and ingrain in each and every member of the family or the team on how to engage with intelligence and integrity. At times it becomes difficult to do both. You need to teach them how to judge soundly whether their action is as per the ethical and moral values that you have set down in what we call our manifesto. And at the same time, you need to give them the tools, the liberty, what they need to be able to write their own set of ethical values and ethical rules that they will follow, set their own ethic code, so to say. Also, with this, you need to teach them certain other basics. When I talk of these basics, you're probably going to think, but why does this have to matter with ethics? But once you listen to them and think about it, I'm sure you will understand that they do matter quite a bit. And one of the first things is that they need to be able to help others without hurting their dignity. Because it's always difficult for a person to ask for help. And then if you're hurting his dignity or her dignity along with that, that is very unethical for the simple reason that there is no ethical code that will say that you need to demean somebody, whether it's a family member or a colleague. Also, let everybody know that self-control is not at odds with ambition. A lot of times I've seen, even when I was working, where people would think that, okay, if you control yourself too much, you're going to kill your ambitions. No, that's not true. In fact, self-control is essential to fulfilling your ambitions. Generally, as I said, businesses tend to lionize achievement. But what you need to ingrain in everybody is that not only achievement, it is actually responsibility that is the key. Do everything with responsibility. And finally, tell them never ever to forget that their gut, what they feel from inside, is a great moral philosopher and a monitor. If your gut says no, I would advise don't do it. Now, such ethical leaders, what are the normal characteristics of such ethical leaders? They build awareness for ethics and values. They ingrain it into their teams. They hold people accountable, starting with themselves, to be sure that everybody is behaving in an ethical fashion. And they have zero tolerance, absolutely zero tolerance for values which are being violated. No, sorry, for people who violate values, they have zero tolerance. And of course, as I said, they need to walk the talk. They need to lead by example. Always you will notice that ethical leaders will never take a decision which is against the values that they believe in. Values are an integral part of decision making. They ensure that the policies that they frame for the organization or the family and the practices that they want to keep put in place are in sync with the ethics manifesto. They provide values and ethic education. Everybody doesn't understand everything at once. They pay attention to perceptions, because at the end of the day, perceptions are what is going to tell that other person, or how the other person recognizes whether you are trustworthy and ethical or not. They focus on making continuous incremental changes. Okay, they don't expect miracles. Especially at work, they will hire and promote ethical people. Unethical people are not going to progress in their companies. So, having looked at what leaders need to do, in spite of all this, in spite of everything that we talk of, very often you will find people crossing what we call the Lakshman Rekha, or that line where ethics is being trampled. The first thing is omnipotence. And this generally happens with people who attain success and who become very prominent. It makes them feel that they are invincible, they are untouchable, and they are hyper capable. While all of this may be true, the worst part is such people tend to believe that rules and regulations that are set are not meant for them, but for everybody else. And this is where the ethics starts disintegrating. So when people believe this, they start crossing that line, Lakshman Rekha, so to say. They cross the ethical line. And it starts with small things. But then, it starts building till a time when you don't think it is unethical anymore. And this is bad. And then there is what we call cultural numbness. Because no matter how your personal values and principles that you have set, there will be times when you will migrate away, or you will be wanting to, or willing to, or tempted to migrate away from them due to various personal situations, or you're overworked and you want to skip doing something. There are different kinds of reasons, but it does happen at times. And when you are in a cultural surrounding, more often than not, it creates a different kind of mental situation in which you are put. And this often leads to a breakdown of ethics and losing a track of what is right and wrong. So this cultural numbnesses you have to be aware of, because these come up without you realizing soon enough what it is all about. And then there is justifiable neglect. It may start with a small thing. Today, you're closing your books of accounts and you find that 5 rupees is missing. You know where it is gone, but you can't put it down on paper. So you'll say, okay, I'll cover this up tomorrow. But then you know how it is. You justified that, and you'll not treat it as any violation of your ethical principles. This generally tends to cascade into bigger things, because either the future profits that you thought of are not coming, okay, or the future money that you thought you would put back into the kitty is not coming, and these repetitions start becoming a habit. And eventually, naturally, it leads to an erosion of your ethical values. So, as far as ethics is concerned, remember that life is a path that is full of slippery roads. And there are many diversions that will tempt you away from that. And it always starts with small deceits, but then they keep, that's the rolling stone that keeps gathering moss. It keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And therefore, it is advisable to make a list of actions you will never ever take, no matter what the temptation. While there is no guarantee that such a list will stop temptation or even stop you from doing that thing, but at least such a list will make you aware as soon as you get onto slippery ground. And if you can do this, that alone will help you to stay on track. So listen to this. I would urge every single one of you to listen to this talk at least twice, because ethics and morals is what will get you to the top, besides your aptitude and attitude. And in fact, ethics and morals, the right ethics and morals, is a part of your attitude. Have a great evening, and I hope you enjoyed this talk. Thank you.